Hamza, talking about Elm and how it relates a little bit to some popular React frameworks. And then we have Civilian here from Facebook talking about how Facebook uses React for their social plugins. And he's also the creator, or he recently wrote a book called React Up and Comers. You should definitely check that out as well. So let's just skip straight to the presentations and have Hamza right now.
Hey everyone, as Alex just said, my name is Hamza. I am an engineering fellow here at CodeSmith. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about Elm. So just by a show of hands, just so some of you people, who here has even heard of Elm? Who's actually played with it? Any one person using it in production? No? So what I kind of want to do today is kind of make a case for it and show you why you may want to just try it out a little. So what I'm kind of going to do is I'm going to talk about React and Redux a little bit, and then how that kind of translates to Elm. So yeah. So over the past few years, our web apps have gotten extremely large. Over the past 6 years, the average web app size has gone up. It's basically tripled. And a lot of that has to do with the media on the page, more pictures, more videos, but even bigger part of that is because of the amount of JavaScript we put on the page now. And that's great because it allows us to make awesome user interfaces and give our users great functionality. But with that comes the problem of maintaining it, right? So in response to this, the JavaScript community has created some awesome things, right? It's created some awesome tools. First, way back when we got Require.js, and then we have Browser, which are module loaders that allow us to modularize our code and really help us out. And then we have awesome build tools like Grunt, Webpack, Go, which allow us to automate a lot of our tasks that we do over and over, like compile the code. And then when we run into errors, we have great things like Track.js or Minty that help us see where our errors are. And then something like Flow, which gradually types our code and gives us great error messages. And then finally, we have web frameworks like React that show us how we should structure our code and abstract away a lot of the things that we do over and over. So I really like React. It makes making UIs extremely easy, and it really popularized this idea of a virtual DOM. And with that, it also brought with it a paradigm shift. It changed the way we wrote our JavaScript apps. And it introduced this idea of unidirectional data. So here we have our app, and data flows down our app. And it goes down to our list, and every single list item. But when we want to change our state at the top, that's where React really doesn't have too many things. So first, the JavaScript community said, let's try callbacks. But quickly realized in large code bases, callbacks become hard to manage. So then they told us we should structure our code using a design pattern called Flux. And the JavaScript community reacted with some awesome libraries like Alt, or Flumux, or McFly. But over the last year, the JavaScript community has really taken a liking to Redux. And the reason for that is kind of Redux's three main pillars. So first, there's a single source of truth, which basically means your entire state is stored in your Redux store, right? And the second, and that really makes our code predictable because we know where all of our data is. And predictable apps are easier to maintain apps. And second, we have our state is rezone, and it really hammered home this point of immutability, which really helps us track our changes. So track changes in the DOM, track changes in our code. allows us to build awesome developer tools like time-traveling debuggers or something like hot reloading. And then lastly, that changes are made with pure functions. So what pure, you've also might have heard them as stateless functions. So what a pure stateless function is it is essentially a function that will take in an input, and every single time that same input is passed into that function, it will return the same output every single time, which is great because it allows us to, it makes our test a lot easier to code, and there's no side effects. So you're not making any database calls, you're not making any calls to an API, which makes it extremely easy to manage and maintain. And Redux was inspired a lot by this awesome language called Elm. So Elm has all these great things that we love about Redux baked into the actual language rather than just extensions that we're putting on top of Java. And that brings with it a lot of ease of use. Everything in Elm is immutable, and it is at its core a purely functional language, or a functional reactive. And that kind of opens a big can of worms. Everybody kind of has an opinion about what functional reactive programming is, so I'm not going to go too far down that, except to say that Elm uses this idea of signals. What a signal is a variable that changes over time and in response to external events. So, for example, in your Elm code, if you wanted to track the location of your mouse, that would be, or your mouse's position, your X and Y position at any point in time would be a signal that Elm would send over the wire. And so I'm not going to go too far, too deep into that, but if you want to learn more, there's an awesome blog post written by the creator of Elm called Interactive Programming, which kind of introduces hot reloading and it really goes deep into signals. So now that we know a little bit about Elm, I kind of want to show this. So here we have this basic app that reverses, I can't spell hello world, but it reverses whatever's in our input. And so what I want to show you is what Elm's basics, Elm's core functionality. So up here we have our main function, and every Elm program will have this. And I'm using something called the beginner program. And what a beginner program is it basically is a module that's baked into Elm that abstracts away a lot of the boilerplate code that you want to write over and over again every single time you make an Elm. And so we have our model, our view, and our update, which I'll get into in a second. So first we have our model. And that's basically like your Redux store. So your entire app state is inside your model. Right? So here's just a string, because our state is whatever we type into our input. And then we have the view. And if that looks familiar to any of you, it's basically just HTML with different syntax. So here we have a div, and inside of it we have an input field, and then a div under it that reverses whatever we type in. And then we're sending this signal, called new content. And so that signal will go to my update function down here, and it'll update the contents of what's in my div. And so every single Elm function, every single Elm program you write will break into those three separate parts. First, your model, which holds your entire state. Your update, which is just ways to update your application. And that view, the HTML and the CSS that you saw. So now we kind of have an idea of why Elm's architecture is so great. But another great thing about Elm is its compiler. And that word kind of brings with it weird connotations for a lot of JavaScript developers, but Elm's compiler is actually pretty great. So before I talk about that, I want to talk a little bit more about what I get if I run something in Java. So here I have a function called field, and I'm going to pass in this number And if my number is less than 2, I want to yell and scream, "Mom, I made it." But when I console log it, I say maybe I don't want to yell it. I don't want to disturb anyone, so I want to make it too low. But I pass in the number 5, which is greater than 2, and JavaScript tells me, well, undefined, it's not a function. But that just won't happen. If I have the same function in Elm, and I pass in the number 5, and I have a number and I'm checking if it's less than 2, then Elm's going to give me an error, and it's going to say, I'm looking for an end of input. So in Elm, every single time you use a conditional, you need an else statement. So I want to take a little bit of a deeper look into this compiler. So here I have a basic Elm program that I wrote. And it has the same basic 3 things. You have your model here. You have your update here. And then you have your view down here, the CSS. So what happens when I try to compile this code is I get an error, and I'm going to make that a little smaller. So it says, pattern main.high has too few arguments. Okay, it's on line 27, and let's check it out. It's expecting no arguments. I go to line 27. Oh, okay. High needed a string. As you can see up here, I need a string. So what's that string? If I look at my view, it's called hi message. So if I type in hi, I save it, and I refresh this page, I get this awesome, great program that I wrote. So Elm's compiler will give you really, really helpful tips. And a lot of it will go even further than it just did. A lot of times it will even throw you links. Sorry for people that can't see the bottom of the page, but it will throw you links that if you follow them, it will help you debug your code and show why you're getting a particular error. So now we have 2 reasons to love it. We love its architecture, and we love its compiler. But we don't know how fast it is, right? We like React because it's so quick. So let's see how fast Elm is. Here I have this benchmark, and what it's doing is it's running this to-do app, and it's appending 100 items to the to-do app, and it's taking them off in a bunch of ways of writing your code. And it's taking a while because there's a bunch of ways. And what you see is a few that do well, like React, Home, Mercury, and Elm, they're all using virtual DOM. So Elm is actually just as fast, and in this case, faster than React. So what I kind of like to think of Elm as is a nice iPhone, while putting all these wild, great tools on top of JavaScript. Feels like I have a phone and a camera and a camcorder and like an iPod, and I'm just trying to work and juggle all of them. But with Elm, I have all of those in one place. That being said, Elm isn't perfect. So things are changing a lot. So that last example I just showed you, it is using something called, it's using a package in Elm that really helps you hot reloading. But because Elm just upgraded versions, that package broke. And that's been happening quite a bit. A lot of the examples you'll see of Elm code won't relate to the current version, and it becomes kind of difficult trying to figure out what will actually work. And then another thing is ports. So Elm's package manager doesn't have nearly the amount of packages that NPM does. So a lot of stuff that you can do, because smart people have written great things, great libraries, you can't do in Elm. So what Elm tries to do is set up a port where you can port out a certain functionality and write it in JavaScript and then send that information back. But that's still a little clunky, and oftentimes it's a lot harder to work with. And lastly, there's a pretty small community because, again, it is such a small and new language, which makes it difficult to find help online. That being said, the people that are using Elm are actually quite helpful. So lastly, in case any of you are wondering, Elm is being used in production, most notably by this company in the top left called NoReady. They are the biggest proponents, and they're actually paying the founder and the creator of Elm to develop Elm full-time. And Prezi used to do that for a while. Prezi's using some Elm, along with all these other companies. So before I leave you, I want to leave you with one more Yoda thing. Just go out, do some Elm. It's worth a shot. You'll thank me later. Thank you.
So what leads to Elm being faster than React? What kind of?
It's just how it leverages virtual DOM. So it's not always for every single application going to be faster. Just in this particular case that for this particular app it's faster. But the reason it's so fast is because it just like React, it uses the virtual DOM. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little more on how Elm has managed to port in modules that have been written in JavaScript so that you can leverage the open source community in JavaScript as opposed to just people who have written stuff specifically for Elm?
Yeah, so what Elm does is, I think you call, you have this, in your JavaScript, you'll write, I think it's elm.port, and then you can write everything that you need in JavaScript, and use whatever library you want to, and then you can just send it back to Elm. Yeah.
What is it used for a layout engine? Like for aligning or for laying out objects on the screen for views? Is there a comparator to like the Flex?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the answer to that, but yeah, sorry. Awesome. Thank you, folks.
All right. Hold on, Stoyan. There is still time for me to insert myself. Hello, everybody. So, many of you are familiar faces. Raise your hand if you've been in CodeSmith space before today. There are about 3, and the people who've been here all day, of course, as well. Students and all last night. So, I'm going to share just a few